and I will turn this audience over to you.
All right. Well, hello, everyone. I am Rebecca Francis, and I will go into an introduction in a fun way in a few minutes. But welcome to the Impact of Authentic Leadership. We are here today to talk about how to unlock true human potential. So let's get started. So before I begin, I love to do a quick introduction. So here's how we're going to do introduction today. I am going to tell you my name, but I'm not going to tell you much about myself until you get to guess and tell me what you think, the two truths and the two lies. Usually it's two truths and one lie, but today we'll go with two truths and two lies so that I can expound on a few things. So in the chat, please tell me the two that you believe are true. So out of these two, I'll read them. The first one is I started in education as a kindergarten teacher. Number two, I own and operate the second largest gospel production in the country. Number three, I have two children and one husband and one dog. And number four, I am studying for law school. Out of the four, go ahead in the chat and tell me which two you believe are true. And I'm going to go and I'll determine who is correct. I see some one and threes, one and fours, one and fours, one and threes. Keep them coming. 3 and 4, 1 and 4. Miss Paulette Williams, I do know her, so she's not going to play. 2 and 4, 1 and 3. Okay. All right. Any more guesses? All right. 1 and 4, 2 and 3. We got a couple pop quizzes throughout this experience. So we're just kicking it off. What do you guys think? Any more guesses before I spill the beans? All right, let's see who's right. And then in the chat, if you are right, give me a heart at the very end. Let me know if you got it all right. All right. So the first truth, well, let's read it first. So I started in education as a kindergarten teacher. Um, for those that said I started off as a kindergarten teacher, I did not. I actually started in education as a paraprofessional. And from there, I moved into the front office. And then from there, I moved into marketing for the school and enrollment. And then from there, I moved into operations management and HR. So when I ended my career in education, I was an administrator for operations management. I did all of the recruiting, hired all the teams. So many things that go under operations, the compliance, the drills, all those things that go into the experience for the school. So that is what I ended my career in. And when I left education, I'm still in education, but now I'm in higher education. So I own and operate the second largest gospel production in the country. I do. My husband and I own the SOAR Awards, and that is something fun that I do outside of work. It is still work; it's still another job, but it is something that we thoroughly enjoy. I have 3 children, one husband, and no dogs. And I am studying for law school. So if you got it correct, tell me in the chat. Who got it? Give me a heart. If you got it all correct, thumbs up, heart. Who got it correct? Anybody? Let's see. What are the numbers? It was number 2 and 4. I saw some 2 and 4s, I think. Good job, Martha. Good job, good job. All right, awesome. All right, guys. So we won't spend too much time there because I want to know who you guys are too. So let's get started. Your turn. Drop in the chat. Who are you? What do you do in the one word to describe yourself? That is something that all of us can do. So I would love to hear from you guys. Who are you? What do you do? And one word that describes yourself. One word that describes yourself. Who are you? What do you do in your job? I know that you guys are in education, but what do you do? All right. Drea, K2 principal, and you are friendly. I love that, Drea. Dr. Stephanie, I work at ISB as a PC. Okay, and then okay, awesome. Thank you. And you are dedicated. Melissa, English teacher and a mom. Awesome. Welcome, welcome. Okay, you guys are moving now. I'm trying to catch up. Is it Carmia? Preschool teacher and a hardworking. I love that. Colleen, assistant principal at Therapeutic Day, and an advocate. I am too, and we'll talk about that later, Colleen. Communication director, who is that? Miss Paulette. I know who you are. She used to be one of my teachers, guys, growing up at Freeport School District, and she is committed. Kimberly, program facilitator for an alternative school. Awesome teacher for 5 through 12, and you are curious. I love that. Jackie, student service coordinator at middle school level, and you are an advocate. I love an advocate. All right, Miss Martha, the winner today. You are an educator, you're a coach, a mentor, an adjunct professor, a retired high school administrator, a grant manager, and in one word, you are caring. I love that. All right, Carrie, you are a school improvement coordinator, formal administrator, and teacher, and you are helpful. I love that. Paula, you are a tech leader and you are loyal. That's going to kick in today in our meeting. So I love that. Amy, hey everyone, I am currently a reading interventionist, and next year I am going to be our district MTSS director, and I am excited. I'm excited for you too, Amy. Congratulations. I am Cherie Greenwood, aspiring assistant principal, a lifelong learner. Me too, Cherie, lifelong learner. Renee, substitute teacher, and you are inquisitive. I love that. We just have a few more. Aubrey Carpenter, director of curriculum and assessment, ESL coordinator, advocate for the underdog. Love it, love it, love it. Nikki, assistant camp director and extension. I'm sorry, guys, it's moving on me. Extension educator, and you are helpful. I love that. Becky, you are fifth grade. And what's one word to describe yourself, Becky? My name is Rebecca too, and people call me sometimes Becky. My name is Katie. I am a principal at the Therapeutic Day School, and I am helpful. Welcome, Katie. Is it Nikisha? Nikisha, early childhood AP. All right, awesome. And you are passionate. I love that. Denise, retired principal, leadership coach, and you are a motivator. Thank you for that. And last, I have AP, Yvetta AP. You are organized and a lifelong learner. I love that. So welcome everyone. I wanted to make sure I spent a little bit of time there. Since I can't see all your amazing faces, I at least wanted to know something about you guys before we got started. So let's dive right in. So here are our learning outcomes for today. We are going to define and cultivate what authentic leadership looks like and what it is, the practices that align with our personal values and organizational mission. So, through some of this, I'm going to ask you guys to really walk in your own shoes as we talk about this, because this is something that really works for everyone. Then we're going to explore a little bit. We're going to empower others to reach their full potential by fostering a culture of trust and psychological safety. That's one of the paradigms. So, we will talk about that a little bit, and accountability. And then understanding. So, we want to be able to apply and reflect our leadership techniques. And I always tell people, whether you're in leadership within your organization, all of us are essentially some form of leader in what we do. So making sure that we're continuously growing, adapting to our situation, and making purpose driven decisions. So let's define it. Let's define it. And before we define it, I want to level set really quickly in the chat. So think of a time that you felt truly empowered to grow. And this is going to be really, really important for the rest of our presentation. But you were empowered to grow in your role, whatever role that is. When were you empowered, and what did your leader do, or they did not do that, or not do that made that possible? Share one phrase in the chat. It doesn't have to be long, but just tell me a time that you truly felt empowered to grow and embody your role. Let me know in the chat. Let me know in the chat. And I don't want to give mine away because I'm actually going to give mine away later today. But it does matter. It matters when we're talking about authentic leadership, because I'm not going to tell it all. I'll just take what you guys give me right now. Think of a time that you felt truly empowered to grow in your role. What did that leader do? What did that leader do that made that possible for you to want to grow? All right. Was provided with clear expectations. Asked by principal to sub for oh, I think it moved for her several times. Okay, awesome. My director taught me how to think outside the box. That is really amazing. Yes. Told that they believed I could do it. Yep. And would do it well. When I was seen and given confidence. I love it. Allowed to have choices and what kinds of support I needed as a leader. I love that, Christy. Keep that, pin that. Truly made me feel valued, and I know he believed in me. He cared about me as both a person and a professional. Absolutely. Pin that too, Martha. When I had an idea to pursue a grant and the principal told me to go for it, he asked how, oh, it's moving. I'm sorry, guys. How he could support me, but just gave me the reins to do it. Pin that, Amy. I was given the opportunity to be a part of an ED cohort. Love that. My mentors shared the potential he saw in me. Absolutely. My director made every conversation a learning moment. I received realistic areas of focus each time. Love that. Acknowledged my skill set and level of expertise. I love that. In my previous role as a fourth grade teacher, I was able to audit curricular materials and identify strengths and gaps, which led me to becoming a master teacher, then an instructional coach. Pin that, Sherry. And Miss is Paulette, allow creative license, trusted what I could do. Pin that, Miss Williams. All right, awesome, 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 guys. Awesome. I feel like you guys saw my presentation already. All right, let's keep going. Let's keep going. I love those answers. So the science behind human performance and learn and leadership. Before we get into all the nitty-gritties of how to unlock things like that, there's a piece of us that has to understand the root cause, right? How is all this happening? How do we unlock potential in people? There is a human science piece of that. And so we'll talk about that. The first point that we'll talk about is psychological safety and trust. And I saw some of you kind of moving toward that psychological safety conversation. And if you don't know what psychological safety really entails, we're going to talk about it now. So it's where the definition of it is an environment where individuals feel safe to take a risk. And my favorite word there is to feel safe. That is really, really important to feel safe and know that when you go to take these risks, that these ideas and these concepts that you come up with will not be judged, or that you're in fear of a punishment or humiliation for failing forward, right? Which is that growth mindset that we'll talk about later. The benefits of psychological safety: employees are more likely to innovate, collaborate, perform at their best when leaders create psychological safety. We'll go into that a little bit later, but also just keeping in mind that when we keep a safe environment for people, if we think about even for as children or adult learners, it really doesn't matter. We all kind of think the same from a neuroscience insight. So fear and stress, it activates something within us, right? And it tells us, like, this is scary, or this is not scary, or this works for us or it doesn't work for us. And that can prohibit or stifle creativity and problem solving. And so it is very important that when someone shows up to their workspace or to school, whether that's a teacher, an administrator, or a student, that they have the opportunity to problem solve in peace, and trust that they'll be safe while they ensure that they're learning during the process. So, cultivating a psychological safety environment is crucial. Because you can't really foster a group of people to do their best and innovate and contribute in the organization without it. So, the power of psychological safety is that you'll notice that people will be more open to communicate. They'll want to share more. They'll feel that, when they're in a meeting, or they have an idea. Like, I sometimes hear people in meetings say, this may be a stupid question. And I always remind people, and I hope you guys tell people this too, because I know in education, we always remind our students that no question is a stupid question. But you'd be surprised at even how many adult learners have a hard time with saying things out loud in fear of failure. And so that, to me, just from a consultant standpoint, when I'm sitting back watching environments, if I notice that somebody feels tense to share out, or I notice that somebody feels, this is not a safe space for me to share, there, to me, is a concern of psychological safety within the environment. So there should be a form of open communication. And I was just watching a video about a couple other countries that empower their students to challenge things that they don't agree with. And so I'm not saying to create a hostile working environment, but that's attention that's essentially what we kind of attributed to when people have open communication. So saying, hey, I agree with this, or I love this idea. What's your thoughts on this? And then having someone, and we'll talk about autonomy later, saying, you know what, I want you to learn from that. So you come tell me your thoughts on that. So even if that person fails forward or has to utilize growth mindset, learning from those failures and having mistakes viewed as opportunities and growth rather than seeing it as an issue or something that they failed at or something that really receives judgment. And then empowered contributions. This is one of my favorite ones. I really empower my teams to contribute and be confident when they contribute, which I notice leads to increased engagement. I actually tested a method out in one of my big teams recently, and a lot of them really, really surprised me. I think a lot of times we have this idea of how we want things done and we kind of give this blueprint, which is great, but it doesn't give people flexibility and creative autonomy to make things their own. And so, being able to provide people with that empowered contribution, you'll just notice that the space feels different. It feels peaceful within your environment, and it creates a natural sense of psychological safety. And so, by fostering an environment of high psychological safety, you'll notice that your team's potential will start to unlock. And we'll talk about innovation and how they outperform their peers soon. So one of my favorite ones is intrinsic motivation and autonomy. I saw Miss Williams put that, and that's why I said pin that. So in the chat, tell me a time where you feel most fired up at work. So I feel, and you can actually start the statement just like this. I feel most fired up at work when, go for it. And I'll start with me. I feel most fired up at work when I can be creative. What about you guys? I feel most fired up at work and fired up in a positive way. I feel most fired up, excited to be there, ready to do my best when I'm learning and growing. Absolutely. I feel most fired up at work when I am problem solving. That's one of my favorite too. I love to problem solve. Um, okay, Martha. Tell me something more about that. And then also tell me something that makes you feel excited when you're just at work, even if it doesn't positively impact students. And then I feel most fired up at work when I see the change that I'm making. Absolutely, absolutely. I'm given full. Sorry, guys are good job. Full ownership of tasks and projects. I love that. You're probably in North. I don't know if you've taken the leadership compass, Colleen, but that's in North. Um, Melissa, sharing ideas. Yes, I love that. I love to share ideas and be shut down by those ideas. I feel more fired up at work when I can follow my passion for students. Absolutely. I feel most fired up at work when teachers ask for my opinion and how to tackle a future lesson. I love that. I feel most fired up at work when I understand the goals and allowed to run with whatever ideas I have and can work collaboratively in a positive environment. Yes, I actually learned that early on in my leadership. I remember this guy named Dr. Jan from Chicago International Schools when I used to work for them said to me, he said, are you going to micromanage or are you going to be okay with how they get it done? And so that actually shaped my leadership very early on. So I love that. I feel most fired up at work when I see ideas and projects come to fruition. Absolutely. Yes, Shuri. I used to work for CICS and we were CICS Jackson. And I won't tell you anymore because that's a part of my presentation at the end. But yes, I used to work in the charter school world. All right. I love that. Thank you guys for that. Intrinsic motivation and autonomy. We need it. And you guys just told me in the chat. We need it, right? And we don't want it to be that we have the X side of it, right? Where feeling like we have to do something to receive this motivation. We want it to be an internal motivation. And we want it to be something that because I woke up today, I'm super excited to be here. And this is what drives me. And so when we talk about intrinsic motivation, it's not something that is contingent upon something. It's just something that internally we are motivated by. So it arises when people feel that they have some autonomy, that they're competent. And I saw a couple people in the chat actually say, when I know what I'm doing, when I'm given instruction, when I'm able to be free with it. And that's the next piece of it, right? That autonomy, to have some sense of control over my actions and my decisions. That makes people excited at work. That makes them feel as if, you know what, I can do this. I got this. Like, and it's an empowering feeling to know that somebody that is in leadership trusts your abilities and leadership to guide some form of work. And so I love that giving people autonomy taps into their intrinsic motivation. And then also outside of that, then I want to come to work every day. I want to come. Like, so you don't have to force me. It's not because you're paying me, or if I don't come, I'm going to be let go after three no shows, or, that's not the form of motivation we're talking about. We're talking about that motivation that I want to show up. And so as a result, those outcomes are that people perform better. If I enjoy coming to work and I want to do something at my job where I feel intrinsically motivated to come, I'm going to take ownership and I'm going to make sure that I align it with personal values, which in most cases, if we're working with students or working in education, typically it's because we're doing what's best for kids. And so at least that's what we hope. And so the outcome is that though in return, we want to show up to where we're going. So, growth mindset and neuroplasticity. So, this is a big one. Growth mindset is probably my favorite one because we have to challenge this very often. That's when and if you don't know what growth mindset is and you haven't read the book, I really, really encourage you to read it. And in the chat, please let me know, have you read growth mindset? Has anybody read that? Has their school districts read that? Anybody? Growth mindset? One of my favorite books. Yes, one of my favorite books for sure. So, individuals who believe their abilities can be developed through effort. So, we know that our brain has like essentially two pathways, right? And essentially, that's where our neural plasticity. I don't know why I can't say it now, but that's where we literally have two pathways in our brain. We have the one that we typically take. So, if we were thinking about going down a pathway or a journey or driving our car down a journey, this is our typical way. And then we have this other way, right? And that's the piece of growth mindset that's doing a different habit, a different learning outcome that essentially will create a fixed mindset over time. And it'll support the new learning mechanism. So essentially, this is our typical way of thinking. But as we continue to grow, and that's why they always tell us the power of yet, being able to say we have not arrived there yet is very, very key. And so the brain's ability to rewire itself is amazing. And so that's why growth mindset is huge. And that's why we want to continue to stretch that. And so the leader's role in that process is to foster a growth of mindset by encouraging their teams, right, to continuously grow. And I want to take this a little step further. It's not really just the leader's role, it's our role. It's our role to continue to grow. I saw some people say I'm a lifelong learner. And in that case, that means that we're learning all the time, not just going to school all the time, but we're also curious and we're learning about different things and looking for feedback and looking to implement things to ensure that we're doing our best. And so that's something to also think about outside of the fact that our leaders in leadership should always be encouraging people to continuously learn. That's why I asked you guys in the chat if you've read Growth Mindset, because growth mindset is a big one that we had in education. And then team outcomes. Your teams will grow at some point, right? As they're relearning. And I always tell people, please give people a little bit of time. Everybody's growth process is a little bit different, but that's why we always say the power of yet. They may not be there yet, but a growth mindset supported empowers our leaders to cultivate resilience, and they'll thrive over time. And so our last point for this piece of it is emotional intelligence and empathy. And so this is one of my favorite ones. I do a lot of emotional intelligence trainings. One of my favorite trainings because there are so many people that are not aware of what their EQ is and where they struggle. Has anybody taken, let me know in the chat, has anybody taken an EQ test? Have you taken an EQ test? Do you know where your strengths and weaknesses lie? Because that is really important as we continue to grow and talk about unlocking human potential. Do you guys know where you land on the EQ map? Do you know your EQ? Okay. Okay. I took one. I've taken a couple different kinds, but if you haven't read Emotional Intelligence, the book, I'll have to get the author. I can send it to Arlen. Um, They actually have a test in, and it's a very it's a more robust test, and it does break down all the areas. And then in the book, how they do how he does the book, I think it's EQ 2.0. But what he does is he also once he gets your score, you have to only read the chapters you struggle with first. So that's something to just keep in mind over time when you guys are doing any EQ learning. I would definitely challenge you guys to do a quiz if you don't know, because it really supports whether you're in leadership, whether you're not in leadership, whether you're, I mean, if you're dealing with students, if you're dealing with your home life, if you're dealing with, it doesn't matter, personal or professional life, EQ is amazing to have because it does channel empathy. So, what is the importance of empathy? It's your ability to understand and share feelings for others. But honestly, you really can't do a lot of that without having some self awareness. And that's why EQ is really, really important, because a lot of times people, it's very difficult to have a self regulation or a self awareness or even any forms of empathy when the social side of it is struggling. And then that does impact how you lead. And so, as we're creating this progression for what we're really going to get to today in our lesson, I really want to make sure we hone in on the impact of EQ and empathy so that our leaders that have that EQ understand how to create those strong emotional connections. Just like I saw in the chat, a couple of you talking about those leaders that have empowered you or made you feel amazing. That's typically a leader with great EQ. And the benefits of that is that they start to foster trust within you. There's a collaboration that you'll notice, that sense of belonging that we all feel, want, and need when we come to our, at least our workplace. And I know some people, I've even done tests where they say they don't need that at work, but I just noticed over time, as we start to talk about unlocking that potential, you will find that those that are able to be unlocked or at some point in their career go on to do amazing things do need some trust and collaboration within their environments. And then that last piece again is that high morale, loyalty, and performance that you'll notice within the teams. So in the chat, anybody a math major in the room, this is your leadership formula. And if you can guess it, actually I might. I'll see what Arlen says. Give a gift card to whoever can guess this. So we've uncovered the science. We talked a little bit about the science. Those are just jargons for you guys to get in your toolbox as we begin to go down the rest of this journey together. We have about 30 minutes. And so I want to see if you guys can crack this code. So in the chat, type your guesses for the missing pieces. Human potential equals blank plus blank times blank. And you have some clues there. Feel free to read it. And then I'm going to give you around, I'll be nice and give you 20 seconds. Let me see what you get. What's your equation? Who is willing? Where's my lifelong learners willing to take a stab at this? What you got? Any brave people? I'll extend the time. We'll go a few more seconds. Any brave souls? Any brave souls? Nobody brave in the chat? Okay. Yep. Ah, okay. People are starting to, okay, okay. Okay. It's okay. I just want to make sure you guys are grabbing the essentials before we continue on our path. All right, so let's see what we got. Who in the chat mastered this? The answer: authenticity plus psychological safety multiplied by empowerment creates breakthrough potential. Is this a real equation? Obviously not, right? As I'm putting all of this together, one thing I wanted you to know is authentic leaders build trust. No fake smiles, right? They actually build trust. People enjoy being around them. Psychological safety lets our brain focus. We're not in fear. We're not scared. We're just ready. We're empowered to turn work into fuel. It's not a chore, right? We're excited to do the work. So that helps us move into the next piece that we're going to dive into before we start unlocking things, right? So, what is authentic leadership? We hear that often, but like, what does it look like? How does it show up, and why? Authentic leadership is a distinct approach that prioritizes the well being and growth of others while remaining true to one's own value and self awareness. This leadership style emphasizes being genuine, transparent, purpose driven, which turns into unlocking full potential in others. And so let's talk about that. When we talk about self awareness and transparency, what does that look like? Well, an authentic leader, they're deeply self-aware. And so that's exactly why I started with EQ, right? They're self-aware. If you are not self-aware, it's going to be very hard to be authentic because you're not really showing up as your full self. You're showing up as the perceived person or the person that you want people to believe that you are. And typically, people don't connect to something that is not real, and they understand their strengths, they understand their weaknesses, they understand the values, and they communicate openly and they admit mistakes. This is my favorite one. They communicate openly and they admit mistakes. Now, I am not saying in leadership, because I understand from a leadership perspective, I can't just go around telling everybody every issue, just even from a liability standpoint. But I do think that there's a sense of humbleness that comes with self awareness and transparency in leadership and just in general. Like, right, a good human being can say, "Hey, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do that." And that's that empathy and that EQ mixed together. And that creates a culture of honesty and trust, right? So now we know that it's a trickle down effect. And I explain a lot of times when I'm working with like police officers and stuff, and we're talking through like sexual harassment and things like that, your team shows up just how you show up, right? So if you're showing up with kindness, self awareness, transparency, able to be humble enough to say, "Hey, I didn't get that right. I apologize for that. Help me out." With that, you're going to notice that your team will essentially emulate that over time. Right. And that's what we want. We want people to feel that transparency is a part of the culture, which is that psychological safety that we're talking about. If we were to just think about that dream culture that we want to be a part of, I would want to be a part of a team of people that checks their own selves in the door so that I don't have to do it. It's just one of those things that is a part of our culture. I feel safe here and I appreciate your self awareness and transparency. Why? Transparency reduces uncertainty and it builds trust, right? I can trust something that I know is true, which is critical for psychological safety, as we just talked about. And when leaders model this, the vulnerability, and again, not overly vulnerable, I'm not saying that because I understand the importance of how leaders also have to show up, but there is a sense of vulnerability and humbleness that really supports people's. I guess the mechanism of building trust, and it encourages others to do the same. So, goes back to what I said, your team shows up essentially how the leader shows up. And so, fostering a culture of authenticity is key. Relational transparency and empathy. Authentic leaders build genuine connections with their teams. And we'll talk about that in a minute. I'm going to give you guys a really awesome story about how this is true. But when they listen actively and they show empathy and prioritize relationships over transactions, you start to see that psychological safety also form within your organization. So, why? Well, empathy and connections activate the brain's social reward system, right? We know that. So, making people feel valued and understood is the key to success. And so, this enhances their engagement, and you'll notice that they're very committed. And keep that in a pin right there, guys. If I tell you to pin it, you'll see it show up at some point today. Ethical decisions and making and ethical decision making and integrity. One of my favorite. Why? Because authentic leaders make decisions based on their core values and the positive ones and the ethical principles, even if it's difficult. That's one of my favorite ones. I pay attention in leadership to leaders that even in a difficult situation, and there's many times I've even had staff members that have done things they should not do, very difficult situations, but I made sure that whatever principles I held to, core values, were ethical and done right, because I did not want them to lose trust in me. And so when you prioritize that, you'll build long term relationships with your teams and you'll start to see those gains over time. So that's definitely something. And I highlighted teams because if you're not necessarily over a team of people, you still have that same exact responsibility. And why? Integrity builds credibility. And I'll keep saying that over and over again. Integrity builds in credibility and it builds trust. So when people trust their leaders or whoever, even students, if we were to just break that down, because essentially we're all employed at some point in time in education for students. When they trust, they're more likely to align to whatever it is that we're doing and for the best effort of the organization. Empowerment and development. Again, one of my favorite ones. Authentic leadership focuses on developing their team members. And so we know that people don't know what they don't know. You can't really force people to know things they don't know. So they have to be developed, they have to grow. And so somebody has to take the time to empower them and then develop them. And that offers that constructive feedback. And I always tell people constructive feedback is amazing. I love the sandwich approach, I love the growth mindset approach, and then supporting and celebrating them when they make achievements. That's huge for building that trust. Why? Because empowerment taps into the intrinsic motivation. So when we talk about being empowered, not coddled, but empowered, right? Empowered to make great decisions, empowered to fail forward, empowered to use my ideas. It motivates me. It makes me want to come to work. It makes me want to show up and do 10 times harder. You'll even notice some people doing emails after hours because guess what? They're motivated. Their intrinsic motivation is in for the long haul. And that is a piece of the growth mindset. So when people feel supported in their development, they are more likely to take the initiative and innovate. So let's explore. This is my favorite part of the presentation. And so we'll talk about it. The whole reason for this presentation was to get you to a place of understanding how to unlock human potential. And so there will be some times for us to chat in a few seconds, but I want to tell you guys a story. But research gives us the why, but stories make it very real. And so here is my story. So this is me when I worked at CICS Jackson for distinctive schools. You can't see it down here, but I think it was in 2020 or 2015. So I was at work one day and I got a call from a what was it, the daycare provider, and they said your daughter is here at the daycare and she is not breathing. And so I remember my job was like, go, like, just go, right? So I remember getting on the flight to Madison, Wisconsin. And by the time we arrived, to Madison, my daughter was not breathing, and they were like, "Man, we're gonna do our best. We're gonna give you an oscillator. This is the pretty much it's the second next best thing to a ventilator to try to save your daughter's life, but we're not sure what we can do. We'll wait into the morning." So I went to bed. I prayed about it. I woke up the next day. And they were like, well, she's still alive. She's obviously she's sedated and her lungs are going to need a little bit of love and support for about 19 to 20 days. And so we're going to keep her down. And said, okay. And I'm thinking to myself, like, oh my gosh, my job, but do you really think about your job at that moment or do you think about your child, right? Most people would say, I'm thinking about my child. And so I called my job because at that time I was a paraprofessional and my student was a high needs student. And I was very, very scared to leave him as well because I knew that anything that disrupts his schedule or day can set him off or put him back. And so I was really scared about that, but I knew I had to stay here. So I actually called my job and gave them a bunch of like notes on what they needed to do with him. And I called his mom and I gave all the details that I needed to give. And then I spent the time with my daughter. So, what I really appreciated about this is that my job told me to take as much time as I needed. They did not let me go. They actually told me whenever I could drive back to Rockford, that's fine. If you want to come get some extra money, come when you need to. That's that autonomy, right? That intrinsically, I was super intrinsically motivated at this point because when your child is sedated at the hospital bed, you do want to get up and get out of the hospital, for a little bit. So once my daughter was pretty stabilized and there was a good routine and I knew what was going on with the nurses, after about 19 days, I decided to drive back every single day. Now, I want to tell you, when I say intrinsically motivated, I got up at 4 a.m. in the morning. I got dressed in the bathroom. They didn't have showers. Well, they did, but not in the suite that I was in. And so I got dressed in the bathroom, and I would go to my apartment and take a shower after work each day before I drove back to Madison, Wisconsin from work. But I got there. Now, some days I was a few minutes late, depending on traffic or snow. And guess what? My job didn't fire me. They didn't give me a hard time. They gave me autonomy to say, you know what, Rebecca, because you are even traveling this far and you're even doing this and you're dedicated, you let us know what time you can arrive. And so I really appreciated that. So over time, when I was able to stay there, it was close to a year that we stayed there, and I did this process over and over again. I started to pay attention to my daughter's health, and it got much better. And they were like, we can now go home, and you can take your daughter with you. And these were the amazing nurses that would watch her while I went to work. And once we got her home, I had 24-hour nursing, and my mom quit her job to help. And that's why I have that picture of her, because she helped care for her. You always want to have family, as we know, there as well. And so she would allow me to go back to work. And so when you think about going back to work in a situation such as this, 24 hours around the nurse, as you see in that picture, oxygen tanks, we got binders for the nurses. I mean, this is a very critical situation, where she has a tracheostomy, she has a feeding tube, she has all the things, she's on life support essentially. And I still was excited to go back to work, but there was a reason why I was excited to go back to work. And here's some days that I think this was the 100th day of school. This was when I was a secretary at the time, and I did I forget the stripe girl. I dressed up her. I think it was like book week or something. I was still super excited in my situation to get back to work because of the leadership that distinctive schools provided me. I was really, and I think you can actually see at the back, it was CICS Jackson at the time. And I just remember how kind they were, and how when I did return back to work, it was as if I never left. And at this time, I'm no longer a para, because they were like, Rebecca, your dedication is just top notch. We want to promote you to the office secretary. And so that was when I moved up to the secretary. And obviously, I took and embodied that role the best way that I could. But that is because, right, I had authentic leadership. So this was one of my leaders, Principal Angelique Malone, who is now my sister in law. Really weird, but at the time she was not. And she really fought to ensure that I had a great opportunity to fight for my job. And so I didn't have to fight for it, because when she explained the situation, and she showed up, the leadership was like, absolutely. Absolutely. Whatever Rebecca needs. And so, in addition to that, it was the kindness, it was the support, it was the empathy. In my situation, it was the team that surrounded me and would email me and text me and encourage me. It was all of those things that really pushed me into a place of where I am today. And so, what does that look like from an authentic leadership standpoint? When we talk about the rippled effect of authentic leadership, we're talking about changing people's lives. And so, even those little people that we are responsible for in serving, there's a ripple effect that happens. And so, this is me today. Never in a million years did I even dream, right, that I would have went into this role right here. But something unlocked in me. When leadership is kind, understanding, empathetic, there's something that happens to you. And I wanted to pay it forward. And so I got the opportunity, over time, to move up in leadership in the school, and then eventually spread my wings into what I do now. And there's a ripple effect. I get to lead thousands and thousands of people all the time. I get to inspire and encourage people all the time. I get to tell them these stories and help them see that showing up as themselves authentically, while also growing and making sure that they're studying emotional intelligence and continuing to grow and improve as a person, is what causes things like a Rebecca effect, right? Where Rebecca gets to grow and be all that she can be because of an awesome leader. And that's why I asked you that question in the beginning. Now, I don't know why this cut off, but I am going to tell you, when I was teaching, I think I was at Rockford University for this one. This girl actually stopped me and asked me to take a photo. And she was one of the students in the class. I was doing a business course, and she said, Hey, she said, I want to take this picture of you so that I can send it back to my country in Sudan and show everybody who I want to be like. And so I told her, I was like, well, I want you to be like you. But that was an inspiration to me, because it goes back to the ripple effect, right? The ripple effect is that I now get to take the leadership, the empathy, the kindness, the understanding that someone once did for me, and instill it in others. And the fact that she was able to pick up on that, and that she wanted a picture with me. That's why I keep this with me all the time. It's just a reminder of amazing leadership and kind leadership that now I get to also pay it forward with. So in the chat, If your leadership legacy could be one sentence on a plaque, when you are done in this life and people are talking about who you are, and that's why I asked you in the beginning, what's one word that you describe yourself as? What's one word that you want to end with on that plaque? What do you want people to say about you? I want people to say that I'm kind. I want people to say that I empower them. I want people to say that I encourage them to keep going when they don't feel like it. I want people to say those things about me. Tell me in the chat, drop it in the chat. What do you want people to say about you? Humble. I love it. Encourager. Trustworthy. Yes. Motivator. Encourager. Yes. 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 Keep it coming. What do you want people to say about you? What do you want people to say about you? Yes, I love that. I make the world a better place because I knew her. Yes, yes, I love that. Fair. I love that, Melissa. She led with kindness. Yes. Understanding, empathy, honesty, made a positive impact in their lives. Inspirational, believer. Yes. Yes. It's important, guys. It really is. It's important. And I'll tell you why it's important while you guys keep it coming. It's important because they could have did one or two things to me at 2022. I would think I was 22 years old back then. They could have made or they could have broke me, but they made me. They made me who I am today. They are the reason why I am so excited to inspire educators and people within spaces that have influence over people. I love it. Loyal integrity. Erin led with care, passion, transparency, advocating for not just herself, but everyone around her. Yes, yes. Those things are important. They make or break people. And I don't think a lot of people know that because unless you really understand your EQ, and where you have to grow as a human being, sometimes it is difficult to know what to do for others. And so I challenge you to really, really focus in. I like that empowering, trusting, led through modeling, champion for children and their families. Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you guys for those. All right. So now that you guys have an understanding of it, we're going to wrap up because I want to give you guys 5 minutes in the chat. So what does unlocking human potential do? It enhances performance. Teams are more engaged, creative, productive when leadership prioritizes their well being and growth. If you think about my story, put yourself into my story and really just walk in my shoes for a second. I am where I am today because somebody prioritized my well being. They could have very well said, Rebecca, you are fired in the middle of the worst time of my life, but they didn't. They said, Rebecca, get here when you can. Get here when you can. Resilience. Individuals are better equipped to handle challenges and setbacks when they feel supported and empowered. I absolutely felt empowered and supported. And not only did I feel empowered and supported, I stayed there for 10 years and moved all the way up to the highest place that I could move outside of the principal, which I never aspired to be, um, because I was loyal. I was loyal to the organization. And as a result, everything that they needed me to do, I was innovative. I made sure that we implemented some of Ron Clark's things. I was a big, big innovator for the school because of what they did for me. A culture of psychological safety and growth fosters people that bring in new ideas. Fulfillment. People feel a sense of purpose and alignment. I knew that that was my purpose because it was my home, right? It was my baby. And I when I actually left the school, I remember just wanted to spread my wings because I hadn't had any other jobs. I only worked at that school my entire career. I went into construction, polar opposite, and for like 3 days, I cried in the bathroom. For 3 days, I literally went to the bathroom stall and just cried because that was my baby, right? That was everything. But I knew for me to really get out of my shell and grow and do new things that I had to move on. But the fulfillment was there. That was my purpose. And as a result, I get to also look at legacy now, right? There are things in that school that only I could have built. And so they get to live out those things. I look at even all the way down to something that seems so simple, but the mascot. I designed the mascot. I designed the little suit that the kids get to enjoy on Fridays, right? There's a legacy, right? There's a ripple effect, a positive impact that happens in the world when you're unlocking human potential.
Sometimes in life we search for
So I'm going to play this video for you guys, and then we have a little piece left.
sometimes in life we search for opportunities. Opportunities of life change. Moments of leadership aren't always met with a fanfare, a spectacle, or pageantry. They're selfless and noble. They're inherent, instinctive. Authority doesn't always equate to leadership. A leader knows that teamwork is always better than going at it alone. And being reliable can carry more weight than any position or power. A leader goes the extra mile when you're tired and when it doesn't make sense to. But integrity is about doing the right thing when no one is looking. It's not about having all the answers, but taking what's in your cup and pouring it into someone else's that is less full. People follow those who are selfless and open-handed. A leader sees the potential in someone and blows wind into their sails. You go throughout your day hoping to unlock the potential in someone, hoping that something clicks. And sometimes the day ends wondering if any significant difference has been made, if any ground has been covered, if there is any tangible evidence of your investment, if it was just lost on those you've led, yielding no return. There will be times when you feel like giving up on those whom you've led, when you think that all that effort, all the guidance and direction is all for naught. Please, don't give up on us. Even though we may not be asking for it, we are desperate for you to lead us. Because we are watching. We are paying attention. We're begging for you to keep going. You help us realize that leadership is something worth fighting for, worth running after. What we get is rich, and it's greater than any monetary reward. It's been said leadership doesn't happen in a day. It happens daily. And your influence on us will have ripples felt for days to come.
All right. So, practical steps for you guys to take today. Remember to foster psychological safety by encouraging open dialogue, normalizing failures as a learning opportunity, and actively listening to the people that you serve, whether that's the little people or your teams, empowering autonomy. People need space, so give them that ownership so that they can receive the trust that they deserve within their working environment. Cultivate a growth mindset. Remember that the power of yet is always in order. Lead with empathy. Showing genuine care for people in your team, they feel it. They can tell when it's real, when it's fake. And so just remembering to lead with empathy, model authenticity, being transparent, admitting when you're wrong, and aligning your actions with your values is what people pay attention to. And then invest in people's development, mentorship, allowing them to grow, give them opportunities to succeed and fly with their own two wings. Now, this is just a 5-second challenge so that we can get out of here. Grab your phone or a piece of paper and write or text yourself one action word this week that you're going to unlock, week to unlock potential. So then type it in the chat if you want to, or you can put like a rocket ship. Why is this important? Well, we know that behavioral psychology hacks are that if you write and share, it increases your follow through by 65%. So just remember that our brain is always working and it just needs to be trained. So create an instant accountability for yourself without pressure. Okay. 5 second challenge. I'm going to give you 5 seconds to do that. Either put it in the chat. What's one thing this week that you're going to unlock potential in within the child, yourself, someone within your workspace, whatever that is. And then just remember to write that down and share it. And lastly, this is my last slide, guys. Remember that your growth as an educator or a leader is the foundational success of students. So when you prioritize your own well-being and you embrace a growth mindset and you lead with authenticity, you create the ripple effect that transforms people like me in those classrooms, in the school, and ultimately the lives of your students. So remember, by unlocking potential, you unlock theirs. So that's you unlocking your own potential, and then you unlock theirs. So that is a wrap for today. Thank you guys so much for your attentiveness. And let me know what you guys got in the chat. But thank you guys.
Awesome, Rebecca. Thank you so much for sharing with us your story, all these wonderful strategies for authentic leadership and emotional intelligence. Lots of thank yous coming into the chat for you now, Rebecca, if you want to open that up and see what people are typing there. We've got just a couple more minutes before we sign off for the day. Any questions for Rebecca? Please share the name of the EQ book. Do you remember that, Rebecca?
Yes, let me find that.
Okay.
I think it's EQ 2.0. He has a couple of them. Let me see.
Okay, great. We will look that up. If you've got any questions for Rebecca at this time, type them into the chat. We'll make sure to get your questions addressed here. On the screen is Rebecca's email address if you'd like to follow up with her, of course. And then we'll be sending out a webinar evaluation form tomorrow morning that you can use to get your ISB evidence of completion form.
I'm going to type it in the chat. It's Emotional Intelligence 2.0 by Travis Bradberry.
And then Martha would like to know the address or the specific title of that video clip that was shared, Rebecca.
Yeah, I can actually drop it.
Yeah, if you want to post the link in the chat, that'd be great.
I think there's only on YouTube one authentic leadership video, actually, but I'll look that up. I'm going to type this real quick. Travis Bradberry.
All right, perfect. There's the name of the book, Emotional Intelligence 2.0 by Travis Bradberry. And then we'll grab that video clip link as well. Make sure everybody has access to that before they sign out.
Okay. All right, I got it, guys.
Perfect, there it is.
Thank you again, guys. Thank you.
All right, if you don't have any questions for Rebecca, you are free to log out of the Zoom webinar session for this afternoon. If you hover down in the lower right-hand corner of the Zoom toolbar, you'll see a leave button, and you can click that, and that will exit the webinar. I'll be following up tomorrow with a link to the recording and a link to the evaluation form as well. So thank you all for your participation in today's Ed Leaders Network live webinar. Rebecca, thank you once again for joining us. All right, I'm going to stop the recording.